This is meeting number 11 of the Fort River School Building Committee. And it is July 16th, 2018. And this meeting is being recorded by Amherst Media. I think that's all my preamble that I'm supposed to say. And we are located in the Amherst Police Department community room for today's meeting. So I will do a call to order. Everybody's here that we're going to have. And then we have we'll open it up for public comment, which will be very short since no one's arrived from the public.
Although, do you want?
Well, yeah. And then move on to approving minutes from the previous meetings. I'm going to admit that I did not get a chance today to read them all before getting here, but I will still ask if there's a motion for that.
Motion to approve minutes from meetings 9 and 10.
Second.
I have
Corrections.
a correction
Yeah.
or a comment. One of the two referenced corrections to a previous set of minutes, but didn't list any of the corrections. And the previous minutes still posted on the website don't list the corrections.
Okay.
So if right now we have no record of the corrections from,
Do you recall which meeting it was?
It was meeting 8 that got
Okay.
corrected.
so it would have been in the meeting
Meeting
9 minutes. That it just mentions corrections but
Yeah.
doesn't list them. So we need to somehow get those corrections.
I will
Recorded.
endeavor to listen, because I don't think necessarily is well, I will listen to the meeting to see if we can pick up what the corrections are. And then I will send my findings around to the group and see if everyone agrees that at the next meeting we can either approve or reapprove the correct corrections.
Yeah, I believe,
Unless someone's done
I think we approved the corrected 8 minutes because she was paid for that, and that could have happened, or maybe it could have happened.
Well,
I don't know.
yeah.
All right.
But I'm perfectly happy to go back and look at things and make sure that we corrected the record correctly.
Awesome.
With that, we want to approve what we can approve, which would be the ones that went around were 8 and 9?
9 and
9
10.
and 10.
9 and 10, so this is really meeting 11. I think I misspoke and said at the
No,
beginning
you
of this.
said 9 and 10.
Okay, good. Now, does someone want to put a motion forward for?
Motion to approve minutes from 9 and 10.
Second.
All in favor?
I have to abstain because I wasn't at this meeting, so I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think I can vote for it. Is that,
Yeah, that's
That's
correct.
okay.
that's the our quorum?
Nope.
All right.
Okay. So that's moving on to introduction of the designers.
Good afternoon. What we're doing is passing around a sign-up sheet because we don't know the names of everyone, some of you. My name is Richard Sipek. I'm a partner with TSKP Studio. And my role in this project is to be the project director, ultimately responsible for making sure everything moves smoothly. My particular area of expertise is school buildings, public school buildings, and so I'm going to be very important in the programming phase, the early phase that establishes the space requirements, square footage, those kinds of important issues. And with me are Jesse Saylor and Randall Luther. Randall Luther is my partner.
I will be the design director for the project, so when we start working on design options, that'll be my area of concentration. Jesse?
And I'm the project manager for the project. So I'm really keeping track of all of your details in between these two. As Richard's working with you on program, I'm taking notes and making sure it's all making sense and getting to Randall and the design. And I also usually follow projects right through construction, so I get a good sense of lessons learned in construction. I can help you with those right in feasibility then too. Bring those together and make sure we're doing real buildings.
If you haven't investigated us already, I encourage you to look at our website, look at the work that we've done in the past. you'll see that most of our work is in the educational sector, K through college, university, and beyond. We've also done training centers for major institutions. We've done foreign work as well. So we have about 25 people in the office. We have, and that's just architects and interior designers. All of our sub-consultants who are structural engineers, civil engineers, landscape folks, mechanical engineers are subcontracted. And so we try to pick the best and brightest that we can find. Our offices, we have two offices. One is located in Hartford, the other is located in Boston. And so we're able to cover the entire area quite easily. Do you have any questions about us? We initialed the contract today.
Yeah, so the contract status, it's been signed by the town attorney. Paul is not available this week, but the town manager will sign when he gets back, we assume. The contract's been reviewed by him. So we're all, we just need to put the final initials on the signatures on the contract, but we're pretty much there. The contract is sitting on the table behind me if anyone wants to review it tonight.
In a moment, we can talk about the draft schedule that I put together for discussion purposes. But before we do that, can I ask you to introduce yourselves and what your background is and what your goals are for this project?
So I'll start,
Okay.
because I'm the chair. My name is Jonathan Salan. I'm a parent of 2 kids that attend Fort River, but by profession, I usually sit on that side of the table. I'm an architect here in town.
Very good.
And so that's my role.
My name is Allison Page, and I'm the parent of one child at Fort River and another child who's at the high school. And I'm a project manager on various construction projects, currently working on the library renovation at Smith College.
I'm Maria Kapicki. I'm one of the community member representatives on the school building committee. I am a physician and a scientist, and I have 2 kids in public schools in town, although not at Fort River.
I'm Eric Nakachima, and I'm a representative from the Amherst School Committee to the feasibility committee here. And I guess I'm a planner and economic development specialist by background.
Anthony Delaney, procurement officer for the town and the town's representative on the committee, MCPPO, and that's my role.
Okay.
I'm Heather Sheldon, and I have, this coming fall, there'll be 2 kids at Fort River, a kindergartner and a 2nd grader. I am the Special Education Parent Advisory Committee representative. My elder daughter is in the Ames program. We have 2 intensive special needs programs currently located in the Fort River. A 3rd is at Wildwood. By profession, I'm an architect. I haven't worked full-time since my special needs child was born, but I get to dabble.
Great.
So.
My name's Christine Royal. I have 1 son at Wildwood, so not Fort River, but the other elementary school. I manage construction projects for Amherst College, and I'm also an architect.
I'm Irene Hovne. I'm a community member located in Wildwood. I'm a scientist.
Okay, great.
And we also have, he's trying to hide right now.
Yeah, Jim's on the off camera.
That makes sense, please.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just to be on camera, I'm Jim McPherson. I'm the facilities director for the town and schools, engineering background, 30 years at Starkville.
You're the guy that we want to talk to.
And I have your drawing. Yes. Excellent, thank you.
Well,
Actually, Jim, come on down.
We made space for you.
Well, it's a pleasure meeting you all. Are there people missing?
Yes. We have one, well, vacancies later on our calendar or on our agenda, but we have 2 slots technically unfilled, but missing tonight.
Diane
Ben
Chamberlain.
and Diane Chamberlain, the principal. Ben
Yeah.
it will be when we get him sworn in, if it didn't happen while I was away, which I'm going to assume it didn't. Filling the faculty/staff position, and obviously Diane Chamberlain is the principal of the school. Is anyone else missing?
Is Mike
One open
Morris
seat.
considered to be
He's
on that?
ex officio.
Okay,
He's
okay.
the superintendent of schools.
Okay.
Because when his schedule can coincide with us, he does it.
Is there a town finance person?
That's me.
Ah.
Okay.
Used to be a separate person, now it's just me.
That works.
Shall we continue discussing
Yeah.
the project?
Yeah.
What I did is created this bar chart, which shows you the phases of the project, if you will. And this is excerpt, it's actually an excerpt from your project phase and work plan that's right out of the RFP. I'm not sure who put this together, but we just basically copied this, and I think it may be adjusted as we move forward. This is a starting point, and I think we'd like to subdivide this into some smaller tasks. But I'm very comfortable with this program or the schedule that's as outlined. The next 6 weeks is programming and preliminary option development. So in order to do that, what I would like to do is have some discussions with the superintendent of schools and whether or not he can bring in any appropriate people, specialists, whether it's a curriculum director or a special needs director, to talk about the program for the school, unless that program has already been previously written, and I don't know that.
I don't believe that's the case.
Okay.
I'm sure there was one written for Wildwood. How applicable it is would probably be something to ask him, although that was a long process and there are probably multiple ones. So it probably is best to start with Mike.
Okay.
How long ago was Wildwood done, or what was the scope?
Well, it ultimately didn't get built, but the schools themselves are almost exactly the same. But the program, I think, was larger, where our population is smaller.
Yeah, that was a combining the two, okay, I know which one.
So that part is pretty different.
Yep.
Let's talk about that, because there was an effort to try to consolidate these two schools into one. And I guess the referendum passed, but then subsequently the town didn't proceed. Is that right?
Well, I'm not going to know every piece of the history, and maybe others here can fill in where I don't. But it didn't. While it passed certain thresholds, it didn't pass sufficiently for the town to be able to get funding from the state. If I put it the right way. But
Go for it.
The state funding, I don't think was the question, I think it was our own borrowing
Yeah.
that didn't pass the state's portion.
The tax override, so this isn't passed the tax override.
Okay.
The town government failed to pass the bonding to fund the borrowing for the project. So the state had committed the funds, but our town refused to match it.
So according to your charter, you have certain guidelines for borrowing, and you had to.
The state guidelines.
State
Yeah.
guidelines. In order to do the borrowing, you had to make sure you had a public vote. Yes.
Can I ask you, what do you want to know about, like, what do you want to know? This is a topic that we could talk about for like 7 days.
Yeah.
I want to figure out what your
Yeah.
needs are in asking this question, because then we could probably answer the question more helpfully.
Sure. Okay. Well, we imagine that you're going to be trying to get state funding for this project.
ultimately, although that will probably be a separate process.
Before we go
Yeah.
down that route too far, so what has happened is less significant than what will happen. And I think the question before us is, what can we do with this site? Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
So what has happened probably has less bearing on this situation than it might otherwise. And the funding that we'll be seeking will be based on what you recommend rather than any particular design that we're going to develop.
Okay. So funding still to be determined.
Yes. The school committee did submit a statement of interest to the MSBA to be accepted back into the process.
Okay.
We submitted for both Wildwood and Fall River, but we prioritized Fall River as our preferred project. The MSBA did a site visit back, I think 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point, something like that, and spent a couple hours with Mike Morris, Anastasia Ordonez, myself, Andy Steinberg, who I have the select board. It's probably not relevant for you, but it's probably relevant for everyone else sitting here. And Jim McPherson. And they were trying to basically it's the beginning of their process. If you're familiar with it already, they go to all the applicants. And so they were at the beginning of that process. And they asked lots of questions, probably some similar to some you'd like to ask about where our town has been and where it seems to be going. And in that process, we discussed actually the Fort River Feasibility Committee as, in our view, being a key part of this process. That, as Mr. McPherson mentioned a moment ago, the past is the past. We're trying to move toward the future, but that also means it's extremely helpful for the community to both, literally know in terms of the site, in terms of the building conditions as it relates to, any proposed program for the building, for the site rather, for an elementary school. What's possible? What are the different options? And at least as we expressed it to the MSBA, one of our beliefs is that if this process is done well, and collectively the committee and you and other stakeholders that could be engaged can do a thoughtful and I think neutral evaluation, good analysis, it should help build both a background of information, but also consensus for the community, so that at the point where we look, and I'm going to say this very neutrally, if there were conceivably an option that could be partially funded by the town that would involve less than a full-scale renovation, if that were possible, then it would help us develop consensus towards that end. If we're accepted back into the MSBA process and the goal ends up being doing a totally new construction, the information gathered as well as the process of working through our information here would also further enable us to build consensus around that outcome too. Is that helpful?
Yes, we already know that you need to look at options, and we're prepared to do that in the study. I was looking for some background information, such as what have you been your thoughts about funding, which you answered. It could be as little as local funding for a renovation project. It could be maximum funding from the state, and how do we get there? That's part of our task, is to explore that range and present to you some options for what's achievable on the site. That we understand that. But part of the consensus building is also knowing the history of this, because the public has been aware of this, right? And the questions will come up. So the better we are prepared, knowing what the history has been, the better we'll be able to answer those questions from the public. Like, have you looked at this? Have you looked at that? Then we can say, well, that's part of the history of this. And that was eliminated because of whatever. So we're trying to get caught up. And that's the reason for the question. We know going forward is really the task, not really resurrecting the past, but I need that to be able to confidently stand in front of the public and be able to answer questions that might come up.
Right.
So what a lot of us are kind of trying to say nicely is that this is an extraordinarily contentious thing.
That's a fair statement.
So, and there are wide-ranging opinions on all of it, and I'm not sure if we want to belabor here. The other thing that I want to give you as background is that this is only one of several capital projects that the town is entertaining. And so what we do as a committee, I think, we need to be very mindful of the financial implications there. So, and I'm hoping that the other committees working on those other building projects are likewise being cognizant of that fact and knowing that this isn't happening in a vacuum by any means.
Yeah, you have to be aware of the other projects, because that's one of the questions from the public. How is this going to affect me? What else is the town thinking about? And what's the timing of all of it? So that's absolutely true.
I think one of the things that, following on Maria's saying about the other projects, and one of the reasons that the project failed to pass through the state government to get the 2/3 it needed for borrowing, is that it increased taxes in the town. And there was a pervasive idea that what we were doing in the last project was too extravagant, too much, and that it was feasible to renovate the school. And we really need to explore that idea in depth to make sure that we can say confidently to the community that it is feasible or is not feasible to renovate the school.
There's going to be a number of options, and there are going to be pros and cons in every option. And together, we're going to have to figure out how we prioritize that. There'll be dollars attached to a number of these options. So we've done this many times before. We can help you through this process. And so we'll flesh out the schedule. Before we get into that, I do want to ask, so there's an SOI, Statement of Interest, submitted to MSBA. Could we get a copy of that so that we know what was represented to the state?
So if you look, we have a webpage associated to this committee, and all documents are
Yeah,
posted
okay.
there, so you can find it directly there.
Okay.
And even you can find past documentation. I think that we submitted the all documentation for Whitewood. It might be there as well, so you can have some information.
Okay.
So all the documents that we have been looking at is posted on the website.
Thank you.
The SOIs are also listed on the MSBA website,
Yes.
so we can tag them there. One of the other things that you had mentioned, talking about programming, and one of the challenges for this committee is that there are a lot of balls in the air just from a purely educational perspective. There is a committee looking at possible merging with a neighboring town, which would affect elementary. There is exciting new stuff talking about a dual language program to be cited at Fort River. There is talk about moving the location of one of the special needs programs. There's 3 core programs that are currently open. So there's a lot of changes afoot. So it's going to be challenging to figure out, what we're looking at. We have asked for guidance from the school committee to say what is it that we're going to be asking, because we're going to have designers on board. We have to tell them, what are we looking for?
Right.
And you're sitting right here, so.
I can say a little more. So I asked several of these questions to Mike Morris to see if we could transfer, and it was, we don't know. There's a timeline, and so I think all the programming has to be flexible enough that they can accommodate many of these issues. From pre-K to 6, we don't know what's the involvement.
Flexibility in school planning is important because
Yes.
things change.
Yes.
And it's difficult to predict 10 years from now, 20 years from now. It's going to be a different world. It will. I'm not sure if I should be asking you or who, when it comes to envisioning the future for the school, who do you think are the most vocal people, ones with the strongest visions?
Well, I think we want to have some level of public outreach, and we've talked a little bit as a committee about that, because I think there are going to be people in the school administration. Obviously, the folks here are going to have some interest in it,
Yeah.
but there's also going to be community members, and some of which we may not necessarily know. And so I think we need to spend a little time figuring out who some of those voices are. So that's not, I didn't give you as much information as you'd probably like, but I think we need to work together to seek the answer to some of that.
So my question is kind of back at you on that. For a feasibility study, we're really looking for a comparison between 3 buildings. As long as what we're designing is generally what the town needs. We do have a lot of our kids are special needs. We do need to plan for that. But as long as we're able to compare apples to apples, a renovation versus a new building, I think that's the essential information we need to take to the community to be able to make the decisions to move to the next phase. So I guess at the feasibility level, how in-depth of a program study would you be looking for? Like,
Sure. Well, The program will define the activities in the school, the population, the age range, the grade range. And if you are playing by MSBA rules, then there are square footages that are associated with those program elements. So now, if you're not playing by MSBA rules, then you have a freer rein into what you can do. The MSBA has minimums and maximums. We're familiar with those, and so that's why the program discussion is a crucial part of it. That's why funding strategy is a crucial part of this. And we're familiar with that. We've been going through that for the past 6 or 7 months now in West Springfield. That is going through an MSBA process. And they're going beyond the MSBA process. And they're pushing MSBA because they want to have a pre-K program that's part of the school. Now, MSBA doesn't acknowledge pre-K in their programming. Nevertheless, the community very much wants to have that. And so we've been pushing MSBA and saying there's an educational justification for adding the pre-K to this program. And so far, we've had one conversation in the conference call in which they've been somewhat receptive. They just won't put anything in writing yet. So we need to have this conversation. Are we going to be playing by MSBA rules or not? And we can help flesh out the pros and cons of that.
Unfortunately, I have to depart at this point. I apologize. I'm just back from a leave. So I've got lots of balls in the air.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
So I'm reluctant to jump into planning options without exploring some of these programmatic questions.
And I think the thing we do know is, we definitely know pre-K through 6, because that was, the town funded us to do a feasibility study to explore that.
Yep.
So we know, so we're gonna be outside MSBA on the pre-K option. Things like, I know that we keep a lot of special needs kids in our community, and that means more square footage in rooms for co-teaching and for
Right.
paras and breakout spaces, and MSBA was comfortable with that for our community on the last project. So following the square footages per rooms, this is something that will have to get dotted beyond this group, I think, but I think as a community we could probably find consensus around that kind of attitude about incorporating our special needs program into our schools. So those are 2 things that I know so far.
I think one of the things is this feasibility study was funded by the town to move forward in parallel to the MSBA process. Not necessarily, it depends on the outcome of the feasibility study, whether it goes through the MSBA or it doesn't go through the MSBA. If it's financially feasible to do it without the MSBA, it would be moved much forward, and the town, at the time when this was funded, was saying, well, if it's low enough that we can afford it, we should move it forward, because it would be much faster to
Yes.
renovate than if we have to wait through the whole process of the MSBA.
Understood.
So-
You're at the stage where it could go either way.
Yes, depending if we can fund
But
it.
I think it would be, give me your response to this, because this is a question more than a statement.
Okay.
To me, it would be unrealistic to assume we were going to do a whole new construction of a building absent the MSBA. So I don't see, it's hard for me to conceive of any circumstance under which we demolish the existing structure, redevelop the land, and build a new structure outside of the MSBA. And so I can't understand why any options that are being analyzed for a new construction would be done outside of the MSBA standards around square footage and whatever requirements they have that flow into your sort of design cost estimating work. I don't know why we wouldn't do it that way. I think what was just being said was that if there were a feasible renovation alternative that involves substantially lower cost and less invasive, work on the building structure, or an addition, where it was just cheaper to do, and it was even conceivable the town might do it on its own dime, then that might be outside of the MSBA standards.
All options are on the table.
Well, except Except I was sort of taking off the table, which could be a source of argument, by the way, I'm willing to suggest it would be. I was taking off the table the idea that you'd do a whole new construction outside of the MSBA standards. Right? I mean, so that wouldn't be all options on the table, that would be.
You know your town better than I do at the moment. So you probably have a better sense of what the impact would be on finances.
Could I add something there? MSBA standards in terms of room square footage is consistent with what we do also in Connecticut. And so if you're doing a new building, wouldn't you hit a certain industry standard in terms of room square footage and comply with MSBA? Say what you're saying.
I would.
Right.
And that's why that's what I'm asking for. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to test is the question of, you know, how narrowly do you, I guess my point would be, if you can narrowly define the circumstances under which you could actually deviate from those standards, then, and that seems like a best practice, why wouldn't we just pursue that?
And there are in Massachusetts, state regulations about square footage for classrooms and so on. So I mean,
Right.
you know, I think more we're back to the basic problem of programming. And if I could just, one of the problems with the previous process was the process itself, and involvement at what time and transparency and that sort of thing. So if you are going to meet, which I think you do have to try to get some answers on this, I would ask that other folks be invited to that as well.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Richard had mentioned this idea of sort of visioning or whatever, with and maybe working with administration and perhaps the community, and that's going to probably be more important if the option that's ultimately selected is some renovated option that's going to be done by the town outside of the MSBA process, because then you're not likely to go back and do another study. You're going to take the work product we have and advance it. And if the community hasn't been involved in it at that point, they're going to feel like you're just delivering some finished package, and they won't feel like they were a participant. So I think it may not be as important in the new building option, because you'll probably come back again and there'll be a whole nother round if you're working with MSBA. But I think to the extent that you can bring the community in as part of the programming piece.
And I think that's actually very important. I think it's also important, I think this is part of what Maria's getting at, that I would be personally surprised if the superintendent said anything differently to you privately than he said publicly. But I would be, and I'm not saying that out of faith, I'm just saying I've had a lot of conversations with him about this exact process.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's genuinely no hidden agenda in a desk drawer somewhere. We're trying to move forward with the pre-K 6 analysis of a building on the site, and it's what we're trying to do. But my point is, I think the even act of having that discussion in a more open forum is itself useful for gaining
Absolutely.
A broad sense of trust and understanding of what's being pursued. And I would the other point I'd make earlier is that as controversial with many members of our community as with the previous project was for new construction, I can also guarantee you that if we came forward with a project that said, no, in fact, the best option is just renovation of the existing facility, that would be equally controversial. And so the justification for that would be, you know what I'm getting at?
Oh, absolutely.
We should think about a scheduling, figuring how we can schedule this in a way in which we can have a calendar when we're doing these things and go through that in a way that invites members of this committee, if it's relevant, members of the public, is I think really important.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we want to talk about in the schedule. I mean, right now with programming, you know, it's all occurring basically in the summer, and you're really not going to get any community involvement over the summer, I think. I mean, generally, once you get into September, everybody's back from vacations and they're into their school mindset. Then, you know, if you have a meeting at the school on a parent night or something, we can, you know, or there's a lot of ways to reach out and solicit feedback and thoughts and comments. But over the summer, in our experience, it's very hard to get the community to show up for anything.
This has us programming until the latter part of August. Maybe it should be extended into at least mid-September to get some additional feedback.
Speaking only for myself here, but I don't think I'd be averse to having you guys push back a little bit on our drafted schedule.
Yeah.
I don't think we're.
I was going
that.
to ask you about the end date for this. Is there anything magical about that end date? You indicated in your RFP a 26-week period, and I didn't know whether that's because you were trying to get a certain date. It's not. Okay. So, let us rethink this schedule a little bit, taking into account what Randall said, and maybe trying to schedule some meetings that extend into September, so we can capture some parents who are returning back from summer vacations. Yes.
So that's great. I know that one of the things that this feasibility study was to do is to not only figure out what the building would look like, but the site evaluation and
Yes.
all that thing. And we do have a couple things pending, which I'd like to see where we jive with that, because I know that you have your own consultants that you work with. But
Yeah.
one of the things that we were talking about sending RFPs on were a site survey and geotechnical, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, and maybe we can get as much of the background work done, while we're
This-
waiting for people to get back from vacation.
There's no reason why you can't proceed with that. I would really encourage a site survey and geotechnical work. This site, from what we can tell, is in a floodplain, or a lot of it is, and we don't know what the subsurface conditions are. It could be mucky, it could be riverbed, we just don't know.
Two things. We were talking about programming, and just to reiterate what Maria said before, there has been significant effort from the superintendent to work with what they've been calling the enrollment working groups to
Okay.
identify. So that has been an ongoing community discussion for months now. So it's not like that we are entirely responsible for that conversation. It has been happening and has been going on. So there's been a lot of kind of stuff there that we should make sure we get into this group. And the other thing is, before we move off of off of this agenda item, I would love to hear from the people who sat on the hiring committee and from you guys, like, what was it about that you felt about what you bring to the architectural design world that you thought was a good fit for this project, and vice versa, like, what did the interview committee see in this group that felt, because we, the public at large, and some of us didn't get to be part of that process, and I'd love to hear more about just like, I want to get excited about these guys, and I want the public to get excited about these guys. So I'd love if somebody, to put everybody on the spot.
So, I did send out the email to the committee about when these guys were chosen. I'm forgetting exactly how much detail I had as to what the reasoning was, but we have to, as part of the design and selection process, create a statement about why. So we really liked TSKD. Probably their biggest thing in their favor was their zero energy experience and consultants. They were very impressive, and they really stood out for that. They also had a strong portfolio. They presented some interesting ideas about what we could do with the site. If anyone else from the evaluation task force wants to speak up.
Agreed.
We tried to make certain points. We were wondering whether we should bring the PowerPoint presentation that we brought and sort of do a quick synopsis of the subjects we talked about in the interview, but I decided not to do that. I happen to have a printout of it. Maybe I could just touch upon a few things, if you don't mind. One of the points we made very early on when we introduced ourselves is that senior people were involved, that Randall and I are partners, were involved from the beginning to the end. And I think, especially in the feasibility study, where you need good direction from senior experienced people who stay involved, that's key. We don't delegate a lot of these things to junior staff. But that's why we're both here. We back each other up. And I guess I wanted to, in interview process stress 8 points. One point is our design ability, and again, I would encourage you to look at our portfolio. You'll see that it's fresh-looking design. It's responsive to the context. We understand that in some areas, the fabric of the community is important, and we need to acknowledge that when we're planning a new building that needs to fit into that fabric. If you look at our schoolwork, you'll see that it's very child-friendly. It focuses on the scale of the architecture to fit the people who will be occupying it. The design is filled with natural light. We usually, maybe not so much in the feasibility study, but definitely during later stages of design, we always work with an acoustician because acoustics are a critical ingredient in our work. We're very proud of the fact that we did the new facility for the American School for the Deaf in West Hartford, which is a nationally known facility, and their acoustics were absolutely critical in that facility. So we do believe in reaching out to the expertise that we need to obtain and bring them into the design process. The scale of the buildings that we do is appropriate, natural light, using natural material, multifunctional spaces. This is a key ingredient in making the program very efficient. Can you overlap spaces through scheduling and through multi-use so that you're not replicating square footage if you don't need to? There are other ways to solve programmatic requirements rather than just adding one. We believe in selecting material that is durable. You're going to be building this building for a very long time. And so that becomes important when you're budgeting the project. You don't want to budget a building that's inadequate, because if you're going to get funding from outside sources, that's only a piece of the puzzle. You're going to have to operate this building and maintain it long term. So we will advise you appropriately when it comes to budgeting. Connections to the outdoors. Security is a big issue in schools today. Randall served on the Connecticut governor's task force on school security after the Sandy Hook shooting, and it was part of the whole process of developing school standards for school security. So we know what's going on in school security in schools today. We know the importance of community engagement. We made the point of public workshops, making sure that we had forums that people participated in. And from those forums, we were able to develop the programs. And then websites and public communications to make sure that whatever we do in the public forums gets communicated going into the future. We talked about my understanding of learning in schools today and how the facility needs to allow for a variety of learning modalities, learning strategies. And then we did talk about.
You skipped one there.
I did.
It was the one of all the different building shapes and how each building shape derives out of its program.
Right.
And so we're responding to each program in a unique way.
Well, you're looking over my shoulder.
I think that's important.
It is, you're right, it is. And I did share with the interview committee the fact that even though initially they thought about 3 options, in West Springfield we ended up with 8 options in order to really flesh it out, to be able to say to the public, yeah, we looked at that and we eliminated it because of this. So from the 8, we're now down to 4, and we already get a sense that the committee is favoring one of them. But we need to go through that process.
And these options are both enrollment, different enrollment amounts per school, depending on which program came in. And it was addition reno versus new building. So.
And then we did talk about sustainability and green design as well. And we have a lot of experience with that, and we brought in consultants who are experts in that arena. Corla Ronan is a well-known mechanical electrical engineer. They've done net zero buildings. And we also brought in the green engineer who will advise us in that arena as well. So Does that give you some sense of who we are?
I
Okay.
mean, I'll chime into everything that you guys have all said. There was a breadth and a depth to what you can bring, which I thought was important. You've worked inside and outside the MSBA process.
Yes.
I think that's important. You have done significant addition, demolition, renovation, and new construction. The net zero was, your consultants they have actually built net zero buildings, so that was important. And you've done an open classroom design renovation and conversion,
Yes.
which I would love to have a field trip to. They kind of had the whole ball of wax.
Yeah, I will say for me, in some ways, this project is particularly attractive because when the starting point is as marginal as it is, the opportunity for improvement is significant, and frequently with not enormous expenditures. I mean, there are some very simple, straightforward things that we can do if we're looking at a renovation option that can make an enormous impact. And so, that's something I've done a lot of renovation work, and the trick and the goal is to maximize the dollars that you have to get the biggest impact. New construction is a little bit different. As we said, we'll kind of look at all those options, but I think this enormous opportunity with that building and that site to completely transform what it is today.
So, yes.
So one comment about the site, there is a new maps that have they been approved? The new maps, the floodplains,
We can
different.
get into that. They have not been approved, but they're, AECOM came in and did site survey, and the firm maps, there was that big tongue of
Yeah.
floodplain it doesn't conform to any topographic lines. Anyway, there were new maps produced. They're using a new program. They're using a StreamStats program to do some additional work. How much that's going to change the actual new maps is unclear, probably not by much. That is available, I believe, on our website. If not on our website, then on links. You can see the new maps on the town website. And we can get you the links to that so you can have a better idea. There is a flood-prone conservation area that is from the 1970s, which does need to be, updated as well. But
Okay.
there's more information.
I have to leave, unfortunately. I mentioned to Anthony that we have a meeting in West Springfield. I want to make sure that we get there on time. But what I would like to do is recast this in a slightly different format and try to establish some public forum meetings, some public meetings, call them what you will, after consulting with the superintendent and his staff and trying to come up with some target dates that we'll circulate with this committee, if that sounds okay.
I think you should CC we have one email, so because open meeting law, all the emails come into the Fall River School Building Committee email and gets distributed to all of us. So if you can include the Fall River Committee in these communications.
But, Mike is not a voting member, so they can,
Okay.
they can correspond with the superintendent without worrying about tripping over open meeting law or anything. And they can correspond with me or with Jim for the same reason. They're not subject to it.
Okay.
It's our deliberations that are the concern.
Okay, so can I reach out to the superintendent's office?
Why don't I coordinate something tomorrow? I'll email you, I'll email Mike, and coordinate something.
And I would welcome members of the committee as well, but I don't know what your individual schedules are. If you're available to attend, that's fine.
I think it might be nice if you schedule it, and then we'll make the meeting available to members of this committee to come. Of course, if we get too many of them on to post it as a public meeting.
Yeah.
Good point.
We
Good
have
point.
trouble getting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know
You're
how
thinking
to-
that's not
I'm
likely to be
thinking
a problem?
unlikely.
Well, I just mean as
But if it is,
a
we'll post it.
courtesy then, because then
If
if
it's-
somebody is available, they'll be able to come by.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that'd be nice.
okay.
I think if quorum happens, one person would be.
Happy to leave.
No, if happy to leave, but can draw straws and see who leaves.
voted out.
That'll work well.
I'll be in touch tomorrow then about setting that up.
Okay, great. And then I see you have drawings. Can we borrow them? We'll scan them, and I promise we'll bring them back.
As long as I get an electronic copy, yes, you can.
That's a fair deal.
I promise we will. Unfortunately, Jesse and I have to leave. but-
Now, I don't have to go if you want me to stay.
Please.
Okay. Because I don't have to say meeting.
It's the exit quality test.
Have you given them all the documentation, all the surveys that you have done, information that we have on the school? Not only the blueprints, but,
Everything associated with this study is on the site.
or with other studies that were done, you did an evaluation.
I'm willing to give them any factual information that's available. I am not willing to give them opinions
No.
of where we're going.
No,
Yeah.
no factual
Okay.
information, documents, but.
Yes, if, whatever you need.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Folks, we'll see you
Okay.
again.
So,
Thank you, sir.
we should move forward. Air quality testing update. After the formal presentation.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't want to.
I'm doing this in front of
The
witnesses.
ceremony.
I know.
On camera.
Thank you. So air quality, indoor air quality testing update is that we do not have the report back. One section of the testing was defective in the laboratory. So they've been redoing it. They did it for free. And when they give me a satisfactory response as to why it was an error, then we may accept their results. But until such time, they're rerunning the test and we'll see what comes out of it.
Is it under the same circumstances? The students are there, when this happened?
So only one portion of the test, the longer drawn out measurement was in error in the laboratory, and that was done just after the students left this summer. So
So
the
the
day
repeat.
after,
The repeat was done?
yes.
Okay.
But it was only one small section.
And do we have all the other information? Or they don't want
It
to?
is complete, but the report has not been released to us. So, no, it's not available at this time.
Okay.
Well, hopefully we'll be soon. How long?
They have to grow the material, they have to run the DNA analysis, I'm still expecting weeks.
So the Wildwood was done?
Wildwood was complete, yes.
And available for public
It
consumption?
has not been distributed to the public at this time. The school committee is reviewing.
We are?
You are.
That's nice. In all seriousness, we haven't met in a while. We're gonna review it on the 14th of August or something? Do you have any idea?
It was sent to you for review by email.
Was it?
Yes.
What are we supposed to do with it? I don't mind looking like an idiot in front of camera. So I'll just have this thing out right now. So I guess I supposedly, I'm not saying I did. I
Okay.
received this by email.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to read it. Once I read it, what am I supposed to do with it?
If you have any questions, pose them. It is very clear, we went through several drafts of, be certain that it's interpretable by a layperson and is complete unto itself, and it is.
So why is that a gating item to making it available more
It
broadly?
is not a gating item, it was simply a courtesy to the school committee.
Okay. So, okay.
That was the superintendent's desire.
I would encourage him to just release it then.
Okay? I will convey that.
Because then I can read it along with everyone else, basically. When I look at my emails again.
We don't have anything about Fort Beaver and
Correct,
nothing.
correct. And as soon as it is released, then I will post it on the regional school website.
And as soon as you get the Fort Beaver, can you send it to us? or-
It will- Exactly, same process.
Great. Any further questions? Seeing none. Survey and geotechnical RFPs.
So, technically not RFPs, just quotes. Survey.
I'm just reading the
Yeah.
agenda.
That's my bad.
Survey is out, was distributed to 4 survey firms that were recommended by Conservation and Planning. I have those due next Friday, so I'm assuming that next time we meet, I'll have a quote for you on the survey. I don't think we've even touched geotechnical.
We have not.
No. I guess we should.
We have
Guess
not
should
touched
start thinking-
geotech because we were hoping that we might have, based on programming and the options developed, some common footprints where we could
Sure, where to look.
choose where we would be doing borings and how many.
Yeah, we can help you with that. And I guess maybe when we look at the updated flood maps, that may help us as well. From the interview, my initial thoughts were that kind of to the south of the existing building is likely where any addition or new construction would go, not to the east. But if that flood area is less of an issue, that may change that. But you know, we can block out some areas that we think make sense soon after we look at the flood maps.
So what do we need to do to make that? Should we'll send that to you? And then,
Yeah, I mean,
would it be your geotechnical person or a different?
Probably third party.
Yeah, I don't recall, I don't think we had
You
geotechnical
don't?
I don't
part of
either.
our package.
Yeah.
I mean, we can almost work in parallel. If you start to pull together what it is you want, we can review it and then add where we think the locations are that make the most sense.
I think the number, as far as getting quotes, is the most important thing.
Number of borings.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can give you a good idea, a good plot plan where we think it makes sense.
You'd review that with your structural engineer before you make recommendations?
Yeah.
Before we go down that route, so we're at feasibility stage for borings. We're not taking a quantitative, definitive number by any stretch of the imagination. So we're looking at 2, 3, 4 to characterize the
Corner
profile.
of the footprint. yeah.
Right, okay.
Further questions or comments on this? Okay, review invoice for recording meeting minutes. This is a voting item. Does somebody have the invoice in front of them?
I can pull that up.
It was sent by email.
It was sent by email,
Oh.
but let me see if I can find it. Anthony.
While we're waiting, by the way, apparently you sent the indirect quality air testing quality stuff last Tuesday.
You
Okay.
check?
I have now seen the email from last Tuesday.
Okay, so if you guys don't mind my reading it off my
Please.
computer. So for meeting 10, $45. And for meeting 9 minutes, $94.58. So whatever that ends up
Okay.
to. I move that.
Want to recognize you to make a motion?
I move that we approve the invoice to pay you.
Second.
Going to read the emails.
$94.58 and 45 even.
Was it second?
Second.
Second, very good. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
Carries unanimously.
I will submit them to Sean.
Great. Next item on our agenda, committee membership. Where is the log name again?
Jonathan looked at me when he brought up Ben, but I know nothing.
Yeah, so I think also what we had discussed was reaching out to retired school teachers to see if we would get anyone, and I think Diane was, pushing that forward, so I think we need an update from her.
Okay.
And send again an email to all teachers, I guess, and the school committee people.
Yeah. I think I actually, I'm now remembering, I think I had a note saying I was supposed to figure out how to solve this issue around Ben getting appointed. That was on my to-do list. I think I might have-
Yes, you needed to get the
Well-
school committees.
To say that we consulted one.
No, I already did that.
Well, I think there's two separate issues. One is Ben, because one is the problem of, is this, it's a town committee,
Yes.
but there was still town was still deferring to the school committee for getting the final okay to have Ben be, nobody was giving the final okay
Right.
because of that. Is it school, is it town, what is it? So that was the Ben issue. But then there's also the continuing issue of not having an actual person to fill the other seat.
Yeah,
because
no,
of
I knew that, I knew
step.
that.
So, yeah, so I don't know, we're still nowhere with that. We have no volunteers. And I think
Yeah, no,
we have to
that's,
still recruit.
no, that's a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a simple man. The mere fact that we can get Ben on here, I just want to solve that because it's
Yeah.
irritating. We have somebody who wants to volunteer,
Yeah,
and so they should be able to.
yeah.
And then beyond that, we need to send out another recruit and see what Principal Chamberlain's done around getting retired teachers in. We'll just have to keep working on that.
Is there a point person so that it doesn't get dropped?
I think I said I was going to be the point person and actually write a proper note to myself to not forget this time. I'm really good at following.
Well, the segue on that is we had made a request at the meeting minutes start to list ball and court for folks. We sort of had that on the last meeting minutes, but that particular one I didn't see
Yeah.
come up in it. So before the end of this meeting, maybe we shall reiterate and try and get them all in the meeting report.
Right. Okay, so that's committee membership. Next item, future meeting dates and location. Please.
So I asked folks to send me, thank you, for those who did, when you're going to be out of town and when you're going to be in town and available. I'd like to propose that we get some dates set up, even before we leave the room today, locking the door if we have to get the next couple of meetings set up so that people can plan around this rather than just having to plan around everything else. So how does it work for people to have, like, every 2-week meetings? If a Monday works fine, I mean, I'll just throw out there Monday 4:30 and 2 weeks and 4 weeks. I don't know.
So what are we
Yeah.
gonna do every other week? Because the burden has shifted to the feasibility team.
That's a good point. So maybe Randall, can you help us out in terms of what we should be doing and how you'd like to meet with us and what we want to do?
I mean, I think probably meeting, every other week is not such a bad idea, and we can just, and they can be fairly brief. We can update you what we're doing, what we need, and that way we can both sort of be in constant touch. So particularly through the summers, we want to keep the ball moving, and there's nothing that will move things better than a meeting. And oh yeah, I promised I'd have that for the next meeting. So it keeps us moving, it keeps you involved, and then we can adjust if we feel like it's overkill. But I think your inclination every other week is probably a good idea.
Okay.
It's either to cancel than to schedule.
That's
Yes.
true.
Yes.
Then Axiom. So why don't we work on what you're just saying?
Okay, so 2 weeks from today, 4 weeks from today, 4:30. And let's say here, unless this isn't available, unless people don't like this room, which I'm fine with. How are you, Connie?
So that'd be the 30th of July. And then it would be.
Can I make a suggestion? And we're gonna throw this. We said at some point that we were gonna be changing the date so that if somebody of the public wants to come, maybe go alternated on the days of the week. So today's on a Monday, maybe next one meet on a Wednesday and the next one on a Monday. Just so that it's not so fixed that if somebody has a conflict, will never be able to join.
Yes.
Personally, I would really value the predictability of knowing when these things are going to be. It's been kind of a roller coaster.
No,
It's nice.
I know, but at some point we said we wanted to involve more people to have a little bit of alternating so that people that are not able to make on a Monday at 4:30 would miss all the meetings. So then.
I feel like the public forums are most important for that kind of consciousness around it. And I think the predictability cuts both ways for the public too. Like if you kind of get in the back of your head that the building committees are happening on Monday night, then you might actually get it on your own personal agenda, rather than having to follow so closely. So that's just my thought about, although Mondays aren't the best.
Well, I would certainly encourage us doing what we can to get more public attendance at these meetings. I believe this is the second time in 9 months we've had a person of voting age in the audience. Is there, I don't know if there's people that would be here but for us not holding a meeting on a Wednesday.
So I'm going to, prerogative of the chair, I'm going to start with an extraordinarily pragmatic question, and then we can deviate from there. We were talking about potentially July 30th and August 13th at 4:30. Do those dates even work for people? Because my point is, I'm going to be practical about whether that even works, and then we can audible from there. if we need to move
I can't attend either.
it. See, they were off to a bad start. So this is
I
why
can make
gotta-
Could you
Wednesday.
do
Tuesday.
Tuesday or Wednesday?
Wednesday, yes.
I could do Tuesday the 17th, but not, and I could do tomorrow.
The
I could
31st.
do the 31st, but I cannot do the 14th. I can't do anything the week of the 13th.
Okay, so that week's out for you.
Yeah,
What about the 30th?
30th is out for me, I'm on vacation.
Okay.
Okay, so that's more people than I do. Okay, good. So give me your summer schedule so I can, I'll put
And
it right now.
Can I suggest that
It's okay.
when is good survey that you can paint the availabilities and not on blocks, not preset blocks like in Doodle. When is good you paint the availability.
Yeah, well, I basically, you know, for lack of computer savvy, I am looking at a Google Calendar, and when people said they're out of town, I put them in a different color and said you're out of town. But if, okay, how about this? How about before you leave the room today, you give me, anybody who hasn't given it to me, give me that, and then maybe we can get something if, well, that whole week you said, right?
So there's only one person so far that said they can't make Tuesday the 31st. Is there anybody else who can't make Tuesday the 31st?
I don't know about Jonathan.
I can make Tuesday 31st.
So, shall we go for having it on Tuesdays for the moment then?
At least the 31st, so that looks like a good
Yeah.
day. I mean, I hate to do, based on what you said earlier, I hate to be random about the days, but I'm trying to be pragmatic. I mean, summer sucks, so let's just
Yeah.
figure out when we can meet. I think the
Okay.
31st largely works. so
Let's
do
say the 31st for right now, and I'll send something
Yeah.
out to everybody and see if we can get it.
Is there something else 10 days out from there or something, I think? or-
Tuesday the 14th?
There's at least 2 people that can't make that week.
All right, so at least we have the 31st, that's good.
Okay.
How about the week of the 20th, 21st?
That's 3 people can't do that.
Can we do remote connect? How does it go with the open meeting now and,
You can do it, but you still need a quorum physically present
okay.
in the room.
It's true.
So we need Ben to please sign.
Hell,
What about the week of the 27th? The first week of
That's
school.
back to school week.
By
But
the end of
people
the
will be
week.
here.
By the end of the week, everybody should be back in town, so.
Yeah, isn't the evening of the 28th, is there something like that? You never meet on
Oh,
holiday.
the back to school thing.
I would say Wednesday or, yeah, the 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st
Yeah.
August.
All right, so it looks like we're meeting in September.
Yeah, we have to.
One option is to move.
I'm gonna ask, let's see if we keep a solid date, day of the week, and see if we can meet quorum.
Okay.
Thank you for taking that on.
Member Franklin.
Okay, anything else in meeting moment?
I guess for, put in a request again to put a standing agenda item for website review
Oh, yeah.
and communications outreach. So I'd love to see that on every agenda. I think there's always something to talk about there. And maybe you, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Randall.
Randall, thank you.
That's
You guys spoke about website stuff. I mean, we've tried to make it a point, we're taking very seriously community outreach and recording and making all our information as public as we possibly can. For this feasibility study, what do you guys see your role as on your website? Like, what kind of information would you guys host? Would it be in addition? I mean, I don't know if you've had a chance to peruse our website, but.
I did prior to the interview, but at the moment I
Right.
can't recall what.
I mean, we got like meeting minutes and agendas, and then like any kind of background information we have, we've been trying to post it there. And then we've been doing press releases every now and again, and, you know, keeping those there. But once we get into the design options, I mean, we could, you know, I don't know if you want to kind of, is that the kind of stuff you like to take over, or is that,
Well, I wouldn't, no.
no? Yeah.
I mean,
I didn't assume
Right.
so, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of when communities aren't, quite frankly, you're probably further ahead than a lot of other communities we've worked with who sort of have nothing, and then we're like, all right, well, we can host it for you, and we can get a link in your Board of Ed. But we can certainly help you populating it with what you need, and if, you know, if we need to host something on our site, and you link to it, we can work with you. I mean, maybe we'll need to know who the person is who's kind of running that website, and then we can, once we get a little further down, we can decide what's the best way to.
So you're just, stuff that you produce, you'll make it available digitally so that we can.
Yeah, in any format you need.
Yeah, and either host it or we link to it or we host it or something, but you're not gonna start hosting our meeting minutes or something. Probably not.
Yeah.
You have no.
It's not our
the
core,
wheelhouse.
it's not our core, yeah, service, but.
So, I guess the top.
Okay. Where do we stand on getting, it was in reading from the meeting reports that the interview stuff, recorded interviews would be available to be posted on our website? Is that gonna happen, or?
There were some technical difficulties with that.
Okay. So they will not be available, any of them interviews will be available via video. Okay. What about the written materials that the committee received? Is that something that we can, now that we have a selected designer, can we?
Those are public record. They're not something I normally publish after the fact, but I can. Those documents are part of the public procurement record.
And we have it in digital form, so
We have it in
would be
digital
something.
form.
Is there any reason not to do that for this committee?
Would
I
you
mean,
want,
I think-
would you want TSKPs? Would you want all three?
I feel like all three. I mean, you know, dredging up the past, I mean, there are certainly plenty of people who like to throw stones at the architects. So we need to, that we need to show that we took that process seriously and we did interview people and that, you know, this is what we got.
Yeah, I can put that up.
Okay. So, one of the last things we have to do is so I know what I think I know what I need to do on the school committee membership and appointments stuff. Just need to know what we're gonna post.
Yep.
Are there other sort of takeaways, and you guys are gonna get to us a revised schedule?
Yep.
And
I'll start
notify
looking at
us.
geotechnical.
And some sort of, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And geotechnical locations, number of borings and locations, that makes sense, right?
We need to
Great.
provide you a link to the maps that we found.
Yeah, although if they're on
for
the
the-
town website, we can find them down pretty easily.
Great. And we'll get you a copy of the SOI for Fort River. And then you guys will let us know when you schedule something with Mike Morris, the superintendent, in case people want to go to that. Those are our primary takeaways. Other than bidding you welcome.
Thank you.
Yes?
I'm digging through here as frantically as I can to find, we need to get a press release drafted or we selected an architect.
Yes.
We should.
Does somebody who is actually on the selection committee like to do that? Because I can.
I can do it, and I can use part of what you wrote with the decision, and justification.
Yeah, people should definitely know this.
And I'm gonna send it by email to everybody so that you have it before, and we approve it in 2 weeks before.
Thank you. Yes, that should go on the agenda for, that
Yeah,
we'll discuss the
that's right.
issues.
Great. So, is there a move to adjourn?
To adjourn.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Carries unanimously, we're adjourned.